Yeah, you talk about the people that Democrats and others rely on for information on this subject. And I think it's worth calling attention to a comment that James Clapper made recently on Meet the Press.
Yeah.
James Clapper was speaking of Russians,
Right.
and Clapper said, "quote typically that they are almost genetically driven to co-opt, penetrate, and gain favor." So that's James Clapper, the person who is sought after as an authority on these issues, demonstrating that his mindset is one of attributing inborn qualities to Russians that make them somehow inherently disposed to carry out spycraft or subterfuge or what have you. And you
Yeah.
have to assume that the mindset that Clapper exemplified there is shared within elements of the intelligence community, which he essentially headed. And it's this intelligence community who are behind many of the anti-Russia leaks that we've been seeing, and which are then seized upon by Democrats as the unadulterated truth. And there's so little skepticism of motive that's applied, and so little cognizance that people who might have a pre-existing commitment to a hostile posture toward Russia are overseeing this campaign on the part of Democrats who really ought to know better, you would hope.
So let me uh, play poker with you and call you and tell you things are even worse, but then step back a bit. What Clapper said about Russians, that they're genetically disposed to do us in and be evildoers, is of course a form, I guess, of racism. I mean, like saying, Jews are genetically disposed to cheat you financially, and blacks are this, and the Irish are that. This is something that we wouldn't tolerate, and nobody protested. I think he said it on NBC or someplace.
He said it on Meet
And
the Press. So he said it
Meet the
on the
Press.
flagship television show that the establishment kind of
All right.
organized themselves
And
around.
and by the way, he had said it in Australia 2 days before. That's where I first heard him say it. So it wasn't an accident. But let's step back a minute. And you're right. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think that there has been an intelligence operation run against Trump surreptitiously, going back at least since early 2016. And that I would call it Intelgate. And it's that, not Russiagate, that really rivals Watergate and needs to be investigated. What these intelligence services have been doing, in addition to breaking the law, with this pattern of secret surveillance and leaking to the press for months and months. So you're right. Who are these people that have sat, I guess, through most of the Obama administration and only now departed, and who have run our intelligence services? So we know that Clapper is a Russophobe. He thinks that they are genetically evil people. But look what Brennan said in his testimony. He was the director of the CIA. He said something absolutely astonishing, but it's good we now know it. He said, and I can't quote him exactly, but I do not misparaphrase him. He said that Americans who have contacts with Russians have a risk of heading down a treasonous path that they are not aware of until they commit treason. Stop and think about that. This is a guy who was downright paranoid about unofficial contacts with Russia. Now, he might have told me 50 years ago when I started my career, because I've had, I don't know, scores, hundreds of contacts with Russians over my life of all kind. That's what I do. I try to make contact with knowledgeable Russians, and sometimes just with Russians who are a lot of fun. But imagine saying that. That was the director of the CIA. And then we have Comey's astonishing testimony where he comes forward and says he's a great authority on Russia, and he knows they hacked this, he knows they'll be back. But then he admits he's been one of the leakers. So we have these three top intelligence guys essentially outing themselves. And the strange thing is, nobody pays a mind to what they said, except to a certain extent, Comey's leaking. But that was okay because it was against Trump. But my back away is this, is that when I was teaching at Princeton, I had a number of very, very good students at the undergraduate or master's level, and even a couple at the PhD level, who didn't want to be academics. They wanted to go to work for the CIA because they didn't want to kill anybody or spy on anybody, but the CIA had a unit on Russia, and it may still have it, though who knows. They did nothing but research. These young people, if they got the job, sat in the CIA in Langley or someplace, doing exactly what I did, studying like scholars, Russia, but they had some declassified material. And back in those days, occasionally, I would actually be invited to join one of their seminars, and we have a discussion. I wrote an article once that they adopted as a kind of test model about reformers and conservatives in the Soviet political elite. So these people in the agency were good people, intelligent people. They could have been professors at American universities, which reminds us, the intelligence services are highly factionalized. There's no the intelligence, no the FBI, the CIA. There are rival factions at the top in there, warring with each other, and they have been throughout my lifetime. One of them, for example, sold President Kennedy on the Bay of Pigs adventure, which was a disaster, while another warned against it. I think what we've been seeing for the last year is an element, but a powerful element, at the top of the agencies, particularly the FBI and the CIA, less so the national security agencies, waging a kind of surreptitious campaign against Trump and his, quote, associates, and leaking. But I wouldn't say that all these agencies are tainted by this behavior. I think this is just was a leadership group. Now they're out, but some of their adherents evidently are still there because the leaks continue.